break from this world. Running on a hamster wheel, but searching for something I can't feel. I just wanna be a lost girl and fly. Take a breath, feel my wings spread, levitate above the ground and make eye contact with clouds. Now I'm rising, I'm soaring above it all. I just wanna be free. Finally, finally, I wanna be free. Finally, I wanna be free. Finally, finally, I wanna be free. Finally. I always daydreaming, never imagined I lose my spark. Living in this crazy time, putting back the pieces of my mind. I know how to run from the dark and fly. Take a breath, feel my wings spread, levitate into the clouds. I'm so high above the ground.
Race, conversations, and law enforcement. This is Moses' People Speak. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Moses People Speak. I'm your host, Terry Watson. Today, we have a special edition of this discussion. Everyone is probably aware of the incident that took place at the Capitol. So I reached out to some folks that I know I've worked with in the past and asked them to have this open discussion. So before we get started, please tell me where you're watching from. Go ahead, put it in the chat box. Tell me where you're watching from because we want to have a good idea of who we're reaching out to, and it will appear in our chat box. So please go ahead and tell me where you're watching from, and please do like and share this. The more people we have in this discussion, the better. So what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to show a short video that I came across and actually is one of our panelists today. And she was speaking on the topic of the Capitol. And so before we get started with the questions and the discussion, let's take a quick.
Then it begs the question, was this an underestimation of the group of people that law enforcement knew was coming, that has a history of carrying guns in federal buildings and planning kidnappings of the Michigan governor? Or was this sympathy? And, in this country, we do know that it's no secret that police are sympathetic to these causes.
So let's introduce, I wanted to introduce our folks today. And I want to thank you for logging in, being part of the discussion. And I put out a last minute, let's have this conversation, and I'm so glad you guys responded. So let's start with you, Nakaya. Can you tell us about yourself? What's your name and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go on to Heather. I'm sorry, on to Sonia. I'm looking at my screen here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nakaya Jones. I am an ex-law enforcement officer, 22 years experience. I worked with a lot of juveniles, and I was the senior response officer. At this point, I am an activist. I'm an activist as far as bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community. I have been known for my voice, but I stay in the fight. I back amazing officers. And I really am in the fight to really bridge that gap between the community and us, because I know it can happen. So nice to meet everybody.
Thank you, Nakaya. And Nakaya, officially welcome to Strategies for Justice. We just announced that today. So you're a part of our team. I'm so happy to have you guys and have you on board. Yes. All right, moving over to you, Sonia.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sonia Pruitt. I am a retired police captain from Maryland. I'm also the past chair of the National Black Police Association. I am also the founder of a venture called the Black Police Experience, and it's going to be all about empowering and educating the public about law enforcement. And finally, I am also a professor in criminal justice in Montgomery College in Maryland.
Sonia, thank you for blessing us with your presence today, and I know we're going to have a great discussion today. And again, thank you for being a representation as well for police and as well as the community. Next, let's go over to you, Chuck. I was going to say Chuck, but it's Charles. I'm reading the. Go ahead, Charles.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Wilson. I'm the national chair for the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. 45-year career law enforcement officer, retired police lieutenant, former police chief, fighting for the interests and concerns of both Black law enforcement officers and the communities we serve. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Charles, for your time. And then last but not least, my dear sister, Heather.
Hi, I am I retired 9/25 of 2020, thank goodness, from the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. I was a night watch homicide supervisor there. I was a former president of the Ethical Society of Police as of 9/25, 2020. I am now a spokesperson and consultant with the Ethical Society of Police, as well as their business manager, responsible for expansion of the Ethical Society of Police into national for labor and legal representation for officers and local, advocate for minorities, police reform all day, and kind of hard to reach sometimes, especially since I've been retired. I've been a little bit worse, but I am happy to be here. So
Thank you, and thank you for being here, of course. So here's the thing. I know we all sort of saw what happened on Wednesday, and again, that's what sort of sparked this discussion. And I've had a chance to meet with each one of you before, either as a speaker or join a forum. But when I watched that video that we all watched happen, what were some of the first things that came to your mind? And I want anyone to go for that. And by the way, folks that are watching online, feel free to submit your questions in the chat. I am watching it as well, and I will pass it on to the folks that's joining me tonight. So I'll go back to the question. When you first watched that video, what were some of the things that came to your mind?
Pissed. I was, as a law enforcement officer, I was ashamed, I was disappointed, I was astonished that there was such a to excuse the expression, piss poor response from the Capitol Police and others to what can only be described as a domestic terrorist attack. Okay, I can definitely say to you without any equivocation, had that been a group of Black Lives Matter supporters, the response would have been significantly different. There's no questions whatsoever in my mind that would have been different. And then to know that 5 people, and let's actually call it 6, have died because of the actions and attitudes of a single person, it makes it even worse. You know, two of those people that died were police officers. One actively on duty, the other off duty, and we still do not know whether his death was because of how he looked at and perceived what took place, or whether he was actually involved. We don't know that yet. You know, we do know that at least one of the other people died by law enforcement interaction. That party was unarmed. Okay.
Can I get you guys and again, you know, you dived into a really good breakaway there, Chuck. You know, I look at this event, and of course, I think that there was a lot of anger for sure. And there was also a person, Eugene, I believe his name was Eugene. What was his name? Oh my gosh, Eugene Goodman, who was the officer that was holding back, you know, and we all watched the picture. I know some folks are not asking for him to receive some kind of accolades because of his actions. What was your thought when you was watching that video? And again, I'll open this up. Maybe, you know, just jump right in. Maybe Heather, I see you unmuted, so I'll give you the floor there.
I remember, I think the Black Experience said something about it first, maybe, or I saw something on Twitter, and I looked at the video, and I was like, oh, he's from the north side of Chicago. He's from North St. Louis City. He's from down south somewhere where he didn't experience some things. Well, and remember saying that and just joking around, trying to make light, because you know that's what we do as Black folks. We have to add something to it that's going to be fun to you know, to make you laugh in the moments of such tragedy. So when I saw it, was like, yeah, he allowed the Senate time to find safety, and that's what I felt he did. And then for it to come out and somebody tagged me, one of my friends tagged me in it. And I was like, you know, that's what it is. He is a hero. He deserves everything. And it's really sad that you had African-American officers left out there. But a lot of us, when we saw that video of him by himself, we saw other African-American Capitol Police by themselves as well. And we all had that thought. Yeah, they left him out.
Yeah.
Right. Now let me. And first of all, I want to introduce our other officer. I knew that she was given the information last minute, so I want to give her some due. My dear sister, the mother of the movement, Carrier Horn. Thank you for joining us. So we just you know, if you guys don't know about Carrier Horn, she's been fighting this good fight for many years. Just past Carrier's Law in Buffalo. Now working in Rochester. Now we're moving into Chicago. So we're doing a lot of really good stuff with that. So my next question, you know, all right, here's the thing that caught me that said, all right, I need to do this episode because I wasn't going to do any episodes until actually funny to Nikias, which is going to be in a couple of weeks. That was going to be the first one of the year. But then I saw this incident happen, and the one thing that made me say we have to do this episode was the selfie taking. And you know, if I'm sorry, but I want to dive into that one. And people who's watching online, I want to also see what you got to say about the selfie taking that took place at the Capitol. I think sort of sparked a little bit what Heather put on social media. Definitely sparked what Sonia was saying on the news. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the selfie taking of the let's call it terrorist and your fellow police officer.
Can I'm ready?
Really
I'm all like,
because take it away.
I'm thinking, what went through your head that you didn't pull away, say no, or anything? Instead, you stuck your big head up in the camera frame to take a selfie. But it's the same thing we were talking about earlier, Terry, about was this whole thing like neglect, dropping the ball, or was it sympathizers? So let's really just talk about what
Yes.
it is. There were sympathizers there.
Yeah.
Right before this show, there was a news report that they had arrested one Capitol Police officer and suspended 2 for being somehow complicit in the actions that occurred that day. Now and then there are 10 or 15 more that they're looking at. Then the news reports that there are officers all over this country being looked at and investigated for even being at the event and, probably looking to see if they entered the Capitol. You can bet your money that there were some inside the Capitol. We might not know who they are right now. You heard the Black officers say, and some white officers too, but Black officers in particular talking about being called the N-word, being hit, being sprayed with chemicals. And that some of those people who were punching them in the face were also flashing badges talking about, we're here for you.
Yeah.
So let's call these things that they are the things that they are. He took the selfie because he felt comfortable. Even though he looked kind of crazy, it was real quick. Same other people who opened the barriers up. I mean,
Sonya's being kind about this.
Wow.
Okay? What should be happening today, right this very minute, every single one of them that can be identified needs to be charged, found guilty, put in jail, have their pensions eliminated, and never under any circumstances be allowed to carry a badge and gun again as long as they live. Like I said, she's being nice about it. I'm not. I'm sorry. Because I'm still pissed.
No, they are good. I love it.
Nakai, I want to hear from you, Nakai, because I know you definitely got something to weigh on here.
The whole, from the beginning, it was almost unbelievable to hear the president of the United States is supposed to be the leader of this country stoop to that level and say, let's storm the Capitol.
Yeah.
Number one, as soon as I saw it, I kept saying something's not right. I'm telling y'all, I could feel it, something's not going to go right. I'm watching this, and I'm watching these Capitol police officers be trampled. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I'm like, well, where is everybody now? When Black Lives Matter, any Black Lives Matter protest, it was officers everywhere. What is happening here? How is all this happening so easily? Then when I started seeing officers taking pictures and I heard about the flashing badges and leaving our officers that look like me out there to be hurt, I got a problem with that because you expect us to have your back. I got a problem with that because that tells me that some of my brothers and sisters that look like me ain't safe within those walls. If you would go to that extent, how do I know they're safe within your department? That's a problem. You have got to make a statement.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I'm with you here. And again, the one thing I am the anomaly. I don't have a law enforcement background. I'm doing this because I understand where my ancestors left the trail, right? And I believe that if you're trying to bridge the gap, and I just had a conversation. I know she's probably watching right now. I think I saw her name pop up on the screen. I had a conversation with a young lady that's going into law enforcement, and we know she's African American, going into law enforcement, and we was having a conversation about things to look out for, right? And one of the things I was saying in that conversation is I feel like folks like all of you guys that's online right now have played a role in trying to bridge the gap, and to me it feel like you're taking one step forward and 2 steps back. And so, but my question really is, thinking about all the work that you guys are doing, how can we tell the community to trust law enforcement if we're seeing this, if we're seeing, and Sonya, I only played 30 seconds of your clip, by the way. You really went into a good dialogue, and I wish I would have play the whole thing, but we you know you said it on the news that there is we know there's been some infiltration between uh, 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 law enforcement and white supremacist organizations. How could we get people to trust law enforcement again? Like how does that
You
work?
know how it works? This is how it works. Identify, acknowledge, and deal with systemic racism. That is the only way it's going to work. Stop playing around and acting like it doesn't exist. People this week were like, oh my God, after George Floyd, I'm sorry. Oh, my blinders are taken off. I can see what you guys are talking about. Y'all don't see what we're talking about yet. Wednesday, they were like, oh, it's more to this? Yes, there is more to this. It is a huge issue, one that people have been talking about for 400 and some years. Law enforcement is policing is the law enforcement arm of systemic racism. So it's not just getting rid of racism in policing, it's just in all of our institutions in this country. That is what we're going to need. So when you're talking about how we're going to bridge the gap, well, really, that's a great question, because we can't get rid of racism as a Black people. We can push the issue, we can force the conversations, but it's not us who created this. And so I personally am not going to take responsibility for it.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we want to see better police, that's why you hear people talking about, and people don't like to use the word defund, but that's why you're hearing it. That's why you're hearing that word. That's why you're hearing abolish the police, because people are fed up. They're at their wits' ends, and they're like, what else can we do? So those are the things they're focused on. But I am telling you right now, ain't no amount of money gonna change the fact that people in their heart and souls are racist, white supremacists, and nationalists, and it has infiltrated our police departments. We've been knowing this forever and ever, especially since the civil rights movement. Yet here we still are talking about it.
Terry, I think the first time you and I spoke, I told you what the institution of policing is about. The institution of policing, as it is practiced today in the United States of America, is inherently biased against people of color and low income. And it was, in fact, designed to be that way. So we ain't going to be able to change the system, because the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. What we have to accomplish across the board, change the who and how we hire, because we've got to stop bringing in the dummies that do not belong on the job. We've got to stop bringing in the people who do not want to effectively and honestly and fairly deal with people who look like us. We got to stop bringing in folks who are just point blank scared of dealing with Black people. Okay, we got to change the what and how we train police officers. Okay, we can no longer afford to train people to be warriors in the community instead of being guardians of their communities. We have to change the who and how we supervise. Because if your supervisors are not keeping your people accountable, you've got chaos. And you have to change the policies and procedures that are put in place to guideline everything else we do. Until you do that, you're going to have more situations like what you had Wednesday. You're going to have more people who are adversely put into the system, like Nakia and Carriel. You're going to have more situations like what we're going through in St. Louis right now.
Yep. Before we dive into St. Louis, because I want to talk about St. Louis too, and we have Heather on, so I definitely want to dive into a little bit. Carriel, I want to give you some talk on this, because I know again, those who know Carriel Horn stopped the choking of a black man and then was assaulted for that and then fired, and really have been fighting for this for since 2006. And so, Carriel, you saw the videos. I know you definitely you and I've communicated over the weekend, but your thoughts on what happened at the Capitol?
I think it was an inside job. And I think that
You're not gonna hold back on you.
Tell us what you really mean, ma'am.
I'll try and be clear with my words. Like they tell the little kids, use your words. So I really think it was an inside job, but it's really an eye opener because not only do we have problems within our police department, we have problems within our fire department, within our government. We already know this, but this is everybody else sees it now because those people were from all walks of life. I mean, and I'm not saying they shouldn't stand up for what they believe in, but the way they did it, now that was really some thuggish stuff. So they always want to talk about Black Lives Matter and how people are destroying property. They went above and beyond that. So, I mean, every last one of them should be in jail, including our president, who edged them on, because if any of us had did that, we would be locked up for inciting a riot. So they all should be locked up. I don't even know why he's even finishing his term out. He should have automatically been hoisted out of there, just like the Congress people were out of that room. He should have been gone too, and he should be locked up. I'm just being clear on that. Just being clear on that.
Like
and then as far as our system is concerned, yes, it is working the way it was designed. That's why it has to be redesigned. And the way we know it to be is not how it should be. So as far as defunding the police, it needs to go into a community budget because nobody should have to go to jail in order to get services for being on drugs.
Yeah.
You know? Or they shouldn't have to get service.
You open the pandemic box, Carriel.
Well, it's true. It's true. So I only speak the truth. So it needs to be dismantled the way that it is, and it needs to be more of a community budget. I mean, I remember being a little girl and going outside to play. My mother didn't have to worry about me because the neighbor was looking out too. So it's like that's what I want back. You know, I didn't worry about police. I mean, we didn't see the police on our street. You know, if we did see the police at all, it was more like just waving to them or whatever. I didn't know all about all the stuff that was going on. And see, I came in the police department when I was 20, so I was still young and naive. I was about to say dumb, but no, I wasn't dumb. I was just naive. So even being on the police department, a lot of stuff that I saw was a shocker. But as far as how it relates to the Capitol, it's what we already know, but now everybody else knows it.
You know, there's a question in the comment box that I wanted to read. They wanted to talk more about it being an inside job because I think, you know, and by all means, you know, Sonia, and your interview, and you mentioned about the white supremacist organizations being in law enforcement, and honestly, I think everyone has echoed that a lot too. But looking at the what happened, can you sort of explain to us, and I say us as citizens, right? No law enforcement background or no law enforcement, as Carrie would say, as being naive. What would make you think this could possibly be an inside?
Okay. And you know, it took me a couple of days to be sure about it because you know you have to wait and hear what kind of details start coming out. But let's just use a little common sense. And some of you won't be familiar with this if you're not law enforcement. But think about, first of all, we can talk about Black Lives Matter, they're not riots, uprisings and protests. Those are the words I want to use for Black Lives Matter.
Mhm.
And how they were strongly policed, and the National Guard was brought in. And we're talking about just DC alone, Washington, DC alone, how they had a cordon of police officers for Black Lives Matter protesters. Okay, so that's kind of like an obvious, oh, I see that. But think about what the police do. The police investigate. They do surveillance.